So you know how sometimes when you're pretty sleep deprived, you kind of feel like you're on drugs, just kind of walking around in this haze? Well, it turns out you are on drugs. It's just that your brain is making those drugs itself. When you're awake, chemicals build up in your brain, and the only way to deplete those is by sleeping. Now, those chemicals don't only make you feel kind of foggy, they're actually bad for mental focus, sharpness, concentration, alertness, and this is demonstrated once a year when we turn our clocks forward for daylight savings time. Because people who keep track of statistics on auto accidents find that there's always this little spike right after daylight savings time starts. So 1 hour on one night, and people just aren't driving quite as carefully. Now, let's look at college and university campuses. You've got all these people walking around, some of them with some significant sleep deprivation, and far more than 1 hour on one night. And what is it that they're trying to do? They're trying to do high quality academic work. I think this really doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially as I look at some of the people I see around. Certainly when I look back at myself when I was an undergraduate, the picture of someone with a lot of sleep deprivation is not a picture of someone with a lot of focus and discipline, really successfully going after their goals. I find it's far more often really a picture of chaos. I think of those unplanned afternoon naps when what could have been prime study time for a well-rested brain instead is catching up on sleep. From what? Well, from the night before. And what did I do when I could have been sleeping? When I was tired after a long day, when my brain wasn't in great shape anyway? I was studying. That was not a good trade. I think of things like sleeping through classes or getting sick more often because, it's not only your mind that has effects from sleep deprivation. Even mild sleep deprivation leads to a decrease in your body's production of T cells. Your immune system isn't functioning as well, and there's a measurable increase in likelihood that you're going to catch a cold. If you really push it hard enough with sleep deprivation, the likeliness of coming down with something like mono. So sleep is not for the weak, as some people like to say. Sleep deprivation is really a form of imbalance. And like any other form of imbalance, as we've seen in these videos, there are two basic strategies we want to use. Number one, avoid, and number two, contain and manage. So first of all, avoiding. Well, that's mainly a matter of making plans. And I certainly remember sometimes I made plans as an undergrad. I marked out my time, what was going for where, that included frequent, significant sleep deprivation. So I don't remember exactly, but I think it might have been something like 4 or 5 nights a week. I'm going to go with 6 hours of sleep. Now that's just not sustainable over a whole semester. That's not going to work out. For even a couple weeks, I might be able to do that. Longer than that, it's not going to work. Likely, if I'm trying to, what's going to happen is I'm going to start yo-yoing. So yeah, I get some 6-hour nights, but then I get some extra long nights when I'm compensating for those and I'm catching up on sleep. Chances are the best I can do is average, if we're talking about a longer period of time, chances are the best I can do is average, say, 7.5 hours of sleep a night. That's probably what I'm going to be looking at. And, if I had done that, I probably would be quite functional all of those days. But since I'm yo-yoing, those nights when I get a shorter night, I'm not that functional. I'm not sleeping any less, averaged out over a period of weeks. But I've got these nights when I've got a super short night and I'm not that functional afterwards. Again, it's not a really good trade. It's not a picture of efficiency. Okay, so I think it's good to make plans that actually do include enough sleep. But even if you do that, there are going to be times when you really do need to push it more than you'd like to in terms of sleep. That's just the way life is for students, for professors, for lots of people, the way the world is these days. There are times when you're going to have some sleep deprivation. So how can you manage it in the most effective way? How can you try to get the most out of it and not have it lead to this picture of chaos? Well, here's my suggestion. Don't stay up late. Go to bed at the regular time, but get up early, having had at least 4 hours of sleep. Now, where does this 4-hour number come from? There's sleep research indicating that meaningful, really kind of restful, rejuvenating sleep comes in 4-hour chunks. That's why it is that a lot of people think about 8 hours of sleep a night. They're getting 2 of those 4-hour chunks. Now, this idea of a 4-hour block being really meaningful, that's something that I've actually put to the test over a substantial period of time. My first job out of college, I wasn't able to get 8 hours of sleep all in a block the nights that I worked. I could get one 4-hour chunk and then a good stretch of hours and then another 4-hour chunk. Now, that wasn't a whole lot of fun. It didn't feel very good, but I did that several nights a week for about 2 years. So I can say this isn't just sort of a gimmick or an interesting idea. It can actually be sustainable to manipulate sleep in these 4-hour units. Now, why does it make sense to put that sleep at the beginning of the night, to go to bed at the regular time? Well, here's why. If you don't do it that way, you've been through a normal day, and in the midst of that day, when you were feeling fairly well rested anyway, you had all these external supports to kind of keep you going. Things like you go to class, you go to lab and you work with your lab partner, you go to dinner with your friends, whatever it is. And it gets to be the end of the day and you're working on that problem set or that term paper, whatever it is. And at that point, when you're really starting to get kind of wiped out, tired, less focused, that's when you're doing the highest intensity brain work with the least external support, having to discipline yourself, just you and the desk and the computer do the work. That's a hard picture. What I'm suggesting flips that around. So it takes the earliest time in the day when you've just had that sleep. You've just had your 4 hours. You've had a nice chunk. So, it may not feel great at the beginning. You may start initially feeling a little drugged, but because of that rest, I find that dissipates pretty quickly. And I've got a good stretch of hours when I can really focus. I'm really sharp. I can really do something. I actually kind of enjoy it. It's like, it's dark out. I'm the early bird, I'm going for the worm. But that time during the day when I'm the best rested, I use that time for that high focus, high intensity intellectual work. And then the day continues on, I start gradually to get tired, I start to feel the effects of having only had 4 hours of sleep. But now I've got those externals. I've got all this stuff going on in the day to help keep me going, to help keep me functional and kind of focused, and I can get something done. It's a meaningful day, but I've put that really valuable part of the time with that high focus intellectual work, I've put that first. Okay, so I think it's a pretty effective way of doing things. Not only that, there can be kind of a psychological health gain to this as well. You may remember from one of the earlier videos, I talked about how sometimes there can be this fear of taking the healthy step because we're so just kind of, we've got this white knuckle grip on our goals and we're afraid to do something to take care of ourselves that would diminish that working time. It can be similar with sleep deprivation. Well, let me get the work done first and then whatever time there is left for sleep, okay, fine. So this again is reversing that. It's saying, I'm going to make the healthy choice. I'm going to get that sleep first. There's not going to be question about whether there's sleep because I did that first. And then I'm going to work. And that working time actually, not only can you have this focus gain of the fact that you just got a little bit of rest, you also, I think, are likely to be more efficient than you would have been if you were before, because no matter how motivated you may be at night, if you're thinking, I'm going to try and get those 4 hours of sleep, at some level you know I've got that get out of jail free card. I can always go without a little extra sleep. Oh, it'll be okay. I don't really need to be that focused right now. Okay, if you've taken the sleep first, then it's 4 o'clock in the morning, the term paper's due at 10, that's when it's due. There's no more slip space, there's no more get out of jail free card. So you've just got to chug and make it happen, and you feel that intensity and you feel that motivation. And you've had the psychological benefit of saying, yeah, I'm going to make that healthy choice. I'm going to discipline that part of me which wants to just grab hold of work no matter what. And I'm going to make sure that I'm taking care of myself. I think it can really work out well.